Welcome, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Lynn Berger, host of Lynn Berger Interviews Remarkable People. And today I have the pleasure of introducing Rabbi Mathew Marko. He survived 18 years in California as an actor, and he was also an owner of a fine carpentry and custom furniture shop. Thanks so much for coming today.
Thank you. Good to be here. I had to chuckle when you said remarkable people. I'm far from remarkable, but I'll do the best I can.
Well, I don't know. Some people might disagree. We'll see today. Okay. So let's dive in right here. Okay. So take us back to when you were a former professional actor who made a living most of your life as a furniture and cabinet maker.
Okay. Well, I will say, people are like, oh, you've done this, you've done that. That's amazing. And I have to admit that I'm probably a jack of all trades and a master of absolutely none. As I was pursuing my acting career, you always needed a survival job. You needed something else to do. I've always been creative. I like working with my hands. My father and mother-in-law sold their house and they bought a sailboat with the plans of sailing around the world. And my father-in-law dumped a bunch of tools in the garage. And he asked me, can we store them here? And I said, sure, as long as I get to play around with them. He said, you know how to use them? I said, well, I learned a little bit in acting college. When I majored in theater, we had to also do some set construction. So I knew how to handle tools. And I just started making stuff for ourselves. And gradually people would ask me, well, could you make something for me? Can you make something for me? So it sort of became a nice little sideline. It gave me the flexibility to do what I needed to do with my other career. And it also was good for my creative outlets. It's fun to make things, to create things. And then as time progresses, sometimes your plan B becomes your plan A. As we had kids and a mortgage and I need a steady income. And so I really kind of morphed more into full-time furniture making.
Wow. What do you remember making when you look back?
Everything. I mean, I did a lot of, the bread and butter kind of stuff were lots and lots of kitchens.
Okay, sounds great. So take us back and tell us about when you were a professional actor.
Well, I've got some proud stories and some not so proud. I always...
We'll take one of both. One of each.
I'm not sure I'm going to tell you about the not so proud ones. You do what you have to do. I was a member of some pretty serious companies where we did a lot of the classics, Shakespeare, Chekhov, that kind of thing. And of course, that's far more difficult to make a living at. When you get a commercial, not nearly as artistic, but it pays the bills.
Was it fun?
Oh yeah, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it was very frustrating, and nobody has done it without coming up against the wall and saying, why am I doing this? This is just insane. And in so many ways, you really have to just put yourself out there. And people think, well, actors are so confident. I don't think they're any more confident than anybody else, and then they get their hopes and dreams stepped on a whole lot more than other people. So you sort of learn to a bit of a skin for that, but there are many times if you're any kind of a feeling person, you're completely broken down to tears.
Okay.
So that's it.
All right. So then what happened after you were an actor and the owner? How did you make the decisions you started to make to change your life?
I apologize. It's one of those things where I hate to say a calling, because there really is a fine line between religious and crazy, and I'm not quite sure which side of the line I fall on any given moment. I do understand that, but it just seemed like that's the way things wanted to happen. The world unfolded that way, and a lot of times you can look at it that way. It seems to want to unfold in a certain way. Call it the universe, call it fate, call it God, however we want to look at things. I was not very religious being brought up. I was brought up pretty much high holiday Reformed Jew. We'd go once, twice a year. I did have a bar mitzvah, but I learned it from a cassette tape. And then when I was old enough to say to my parents, no, this is not for me, which is really right after my bar mitzvah, that was it. And I really had very, very little connection spiritually to Judaism. And I explored other spiritualities, other spiritual paths. I looked at Eastern thought for a long time. And then as an adult, I was sort of living my life. Then I met my wife-to-be, and Marie is a Jew by choice. She converted to Judaism. Now, she converted long before she met me. She was a single mom, and her parents were divorced. Her father is very fundamental Christian, and her mother is what I call a devout atheist, which, by the way, both require quite a bit of faith, a big leap of faith. And neither one really worked for her, and she wanted something that she could live by and wanted something for her to pass on to her children. And in her exploration, she wound up and discovered she had a Jewish neshama, she had a Jewish soul. So when I met her, she told me she was Jewish, and it really wasn't a plus or a negative to me one way or another. As we started getting serious, though, she said to me, well, I go to synagogue and I expect you to come with me and have a Jewish marriage, not a Jewish wedding. That's easy. You can find a rabbi to give you a Jewish wedding, a marriage where we have a basis in our home based on a tradition. So we started going to synagogue, and pretty much the first day I went, I met Rabbi Dan Shevitz, who's my friend, my mentor, and my rabbi. And things started hitting me because I realized that no, the theology is far broader than that. As a matter of fact, there's no one Jewish take on anything. Someone asks me, what's the Jewish take on? Well, some schools of thought say this, some say this, and some say that. Yeah, but which one is it? No, then you don't understand Judaism. If you say which one is it, it's this, 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 and something in between. And the more I began to learn, the more I was excited by it, the more I found it worked for me. Again, I learned very quickly because I was able to sing, I know music, and I know Hebrew. But we also had, because there are two conservative seminaries in America, that's United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism. There's JTS, the Jewish Theological Seminary in Manhattan, and there's the Ziegler School of Rabbinical Studies in Los Angeles. And always had really, really great, sharp interns, because Rabbi Dan is just, I mean, if one day I can be half the rabbi that Dan is, I'll be doing pretty good for myself. And because he was such a special leader and so kind and so wise, we always had interns that would spend a year or two to learn from Dan. And these were people that I befriended because they had something I wanted. They had knowledge and they were teaching, and I really wanted what they had. And the more I started learning, the more people were saying to me, well, when are you going to go to rabbinical school? Because it's right there, it's right in town. Well, when are you going to go? I'm like, well, come on, I have a business and a wife and children and a mortgage, and it's just, it's not in the cards.
Yeah.
But for years, people were, when are you going to go? And my friend Aviva Berg, who's at her ordination party, she gave me the little Rabbi Black book. I'm supposed to give her that. She gave me one as a gift. And I said, well, you give me this one, I'm never going to need it. She goes, trust me, you're going to need it. I said, I'm never going to need it. She says, you're going to need it. Well, a couple of years later, I from out of the blue, I decided, I think I should go and see what's going on up on the hill. That's where the school. By the end of the day, I was literally high as a kite. I mean, I was just buzzing. And I couldn't get home fast enough. I ran home to my wife and I said, you know something? I think I would like to go to rabbinical school. And she said, duh, right? She says, about time you figured it out. I knew that.
She knew.
She knew. And I said, how can we do this? Logistically, it's quite expensive, and it means I won't be earning a living. And, it's 5 years full-time grad school. And she said, we'll make it happen. And now here's where, again, I think to be a religious person, you have to be okay with paradox. I really do. I think people who think they have the answers and this is how it is, I think are the most frightening people on the face of the earth, personally. They're the ones that do horrible, awful things in the name of God and religion. And I will say, not in the name of my God and not in the name of my religion. So if you ask me, do I believe that God takes a conscious and active hand in our lives? 1 minute, I'll say, no, that not at all. But if you ask me the same question 5 minutes later, you might get a very, very different answer. And that's okay, because in many ways, religion is a tool. God is God. I think God is fine no matter what name we use and whatever practice we find our way to holiness. But all the rest, I think, is a human invention. Religion itself is a human invention, and the way we relate to God, because we don't even know what we don't know. Let's face it, we're human beings. We can't even begin to fathom how much we can't fathom about God, the universe, the nature of reality. And if there is an objective truth to the universe, I don't think we get it. Not, at least not in this lifetime, maybe in the next one. But it's a long way to go to say, there were so many logistical concerns I had about going to school. I had business concerns and rent concerns for my shop and my employees. I had a lot of employees and it was a time where the economy was starting to really tank. It was 09, 10, and I really felt anybody who was working hourly can't afford not to. They cannot afford to lose their job. So how is this going to play out? I went and I applied. It was already long past the application deadline, but they pulled together a quick application process for me. I got my essays in, I met with the rabbis, and literally on the way home, I got a phone call that said, "You're in."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was great. So I pulled over the car, I said a Shechianu, thanking God for that moment in time. And I went home and I told my wife, I said, so now we got to figure this thing out. And I have to tell you, it is uncanny. In the next 24 hours, every single logistic concern just went ka-ching, 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 and fell into place. So much so that it could not have been coincidence, or if it was a coincidence, as one heck of a coincidence. Or I think sometimes coincidence is the way God speaks with us. And after literally 24 hours, it was just, everything was done. Everything was taken care of. It's just a matter of go and make it happen. And it was as if God was saying, I got your back, Matt. Good choice.
And how was the experience while you were in school?
It was wonderful. And it was also, ups and downs. It builds character. So no, for the most part, it was wonderful. I mean, it was just so mind expanding and eye opening. And I even had to say to a lot of my teachers that I was not being hyperbolic and I was not, making fun when I was sitting there going, wow, amazing. Most of my colleagues had a much stronger Jewish upbringing than I did, and had much more knowledge of Talmud and rabbinic texts in the Bible. So for me, it was all still very, very new and fresh and just, mind blowing. So that was really amazing. But there were several times where, in a 5-year process, and I think it's probably part of it, you hit a wall. And some people decide it's not for them and they drop out and they move on to other things. I think dropout's even a bad term. They decide that they're suited for other things.
Decision, yes.
Exactly. They decide on another path. And I was there a couple of times. I was really at the precipice a couple of times. You'll know. And yes, somewhere in my 5th year, I thought, you know what? I know as much as I'm going to know at this point. Anything else I need to know, I'm going to figure it out as I go. I got it, turn me loose. And they're like, well, not quite yet, but soon we'll be turning you. And I have learned, I mean, there are certain things that you can't be prepared for. None of us were prepared for COVID. None of us.
Right.
Were prepared.
I want to get into that. Yes.
Yeah. But what did we, I think I was steeped in enough tradition and steeped in enough text where when the unspeakable happened, I had a net. I had enough to call upon, and I had a community, and I had friends and colleagues to make it happen.
Right. How did you get to where you are now? How did you get to the congregation you are now?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a lot of it's logistics. They for the graduating seniors of JTS and Ziegler School, they have kind of a speed dating thing. It's interview week. Any of the congregations who are looking for rabbis can go to this 1 week long interview week, and candidates who are looking for a position, first years, people who are graduating, go, and you sign up for the different congregations put out dossiers. They fill out questionnaires and they talk about what their mission are, and there's certain questions that they all answer in terms of egalitarianism, LGBTQ plus inclusiveness, things like that. And based on these practices, you can get an idea of, is this a congregation that aligns with my own personal ethics and theology? And then you ask for an interview and you get 45 minutes to spill out your life and learn about them. And from there, the ones that are interested in you will call you for an in-person. You come and you spend a long weekend. So there were several congregations that I was able to come and visit. Greenville was kind of our first, Beth Israel was kind of our first choice already. We wanted to get out of LA. We wanted a little bit of a simpler life. And I already knew this town because I'd been spending my summers at Camp Ramah in Georgia, and Greenville's only 2 hours away. It was a really great day off. And by the way, now that if you're seeing this, just Google Greenville. And it's, one of the fastest growing cities in America. It's in between Atlanta and Charlotte, but it's really become a destination in its own right. It's very international because of Michelin is here and BMW is here and GE and Fleur Daniels. It's a great cultural life. And this congregation is 104 years old. I've got people that are third and fourth generation. It's really a great place. I've been here 5 years, and I don't know, this is my first full-time pulpit, and it may well be my last one. It looks like it could be the shirt. Yeah.
Well, you said when we spoke before the interview, you said you have the best job in the world.
I actually, well, for me, right? Like, I don't know how you do that job, because for so many years I was my own boss. Undergrad, I majored in theater. And I also wind up minoring in Hebrew. Now that was not a choice. I thought after my first year, I was going to go and spend the summer in Israel with my sister. So I decided, well, I'll get an easy language requirement out of the way. I'll take Hebrew because I know Hebrew from my bar mitzvah and in Reform congregation. Of course, in the first week, we learned everything I had learned up to that point. We learned the alphabet, and then we started studying it as a modern language. But I really fell in love with the language, and then I spent that summer in Israel and just fell in love with that part of the world and our Jewish heritage. I still had no interest in the spiritual aspects, the religious aspects. It was purely a cultural and a people thing. When I came back, I continued studying Hebrew, and I took 4 full years of college Hebrew, and I minored in it. So there I am, graduating with a bachelor in acting and a minor in Hebrew. So essentially, here's a man with a higher education and absolutely no job skills whatsoever. Would you like fries with that? Was probably the thing I was most suited to. But it took me 25 years to figure out that an actor, someone who's comfortable in their skin, who's comfortable communicating and being with people. I've also, I think I'm born an off-the-wall extrovert. I've always been a people person. So someone who can do that and has knowledge of Hebrew is a pretty good basis to jump off.
Good combination, right?
Good combination, yeah. And believe me, the woodworking in it, and I think that actually makes the trifecta. I know it sounds crazy, but when you have 3 major careers that I've involved in, you add them all together. Yes, the communication skills and the Hebrew skills, but really the creativity. When you're working with wood or metal or plastics, which is a lot of what I worked with, I think, or any medium, be it clay or cloth or any artistic creative medium, the material itself has a mind. There's certain things you can do with it, and there's certain things you simply can't do with it. So when I teach the kids how to work with a lathe is when you put a block of wood on a thing, it spins really fast, and you kind of carve it. How do you carve a pair of candlesticks? Well, you put the wood in there and you cut away everything that's not a candlestick. You have to listen to what the wood's telling you. You can't come in from the end because the end grain is really, really hard. If you try to cut from the end, you're going to wind up hurting yourself. So you've got to finesse it, and you've got to work in partnership. And a community is no different. I can't come in and force people to be what they're not. I can't force a community in a direction that it doesn't already want to go in. Now, I can coax, I can lure, but it's a give and take. And
everything comes to use for you. You brought everything together.
I think so. And my job, I do think for me, it's the best job in the world. And some weeks, it's fairly relaxed, and some weeks, I'll go a month without a day off because Monday's my day off, and it always seems that Monday is the day something horrible happens or somebody, God forbid, passes on. But and even some things like that, like I won't say I enjoy doing funerals, but they're really, really fulfilling. There's something about when you meet some people and you have a relationship with them, and then when you get involved and they let you in at the most difficult and emotionally bearing times in their lives, there's something about your relationship that's forever changed, and there's an intimacy that you didn't have before. And I mean, I'll just put it bluntly, once they let you bury their mom, there's a whole different connection, and it's even unspoken. And even the wonderful times, if I get to help someone bring a baby into the covenant, or this summer I have 3 weddings to perform, what a joy. What a joy to be the one that gets to do that. It's a privilege, and it's an honor to be trusted. I got to tell you though, after 5 years, I still largely feel like an imposter. When I started rabbinical school, so now it's over 10 years ago, because it was 5 years of school and I've been out for 5. I started having a very vivid dream, and it's going to sound like I'm making it up, but this is it's just like it was so real. I would find myself in some nondescript synagogue, just generic synagogue, and I'm behind the podium, but it's a very, very, very thin podium, and I'm naked, head to toe, not wearing a stitch of clothing except for one of those tiny little bar mitzvah talits, right? And I'm trying to hide behind, and I don't know any of the tunes, and I don't know any of the people, and the room is full, and they're all looking at me. And so I started having this dream, and I would wake up just freaked out, and it was happening on a regular basis. And I went and I talked to Rabbi Dan. I told him what this dream was, and he said, that's an imposter dream. Don't worry about it. I said, don't worry about it. He says, yeah, don't worry about it. I said, don't worry about it, because they'll go away. He said, no, they'll never go away. I've been doing this for 40 years and I still have dreams like that. He said, if they go away, then you need to start worrying.
Okay, good advice.
And that makes sense. And I have colleagues that I just see the way they walk and the way they talk, and I think to myself, you need a little dose of humility there. You're not, because what happens is, and as a rabbi, I have it all the time. People say, oh, Rabbi, you're so wonderful. And you start to think, well, gee, I guess I am kind of wonderful. And at that point, you're useless. Time to hang up your kippah, retire, you're done, because you're not going to be any good to anybody at that point. So I hope and I still do have my imposter dream.
Thank you for being so honest. Now, I just want to spend a few minutes. It's been quite a year. And as you said, you were as prepared as you could be, yet tell us a little bit about the past year for you. And I also, if there's anything we've all gone through so much, and yet there are some things that maybe we want to continue that we had the opportunity to do more of during this time. Was there anything that you would want to continue that made you realize something, or the way in which you want to set up the synagogue, or?
I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's that a community is not 4 walls. It's not brick, and it's not mortar, and it's not wood. A community are humans, are souls. And over the course of time, I've gotten better with the technology. I've gotten better with the sound and the video, like that. That's something that it's a bell that cannot be unrung. And I go back and forth on how I feel about it, because I don't like using technology on Shabbat. But I also understand we have some older congregants that are homebound who were not able to attend as often as they would have liked in the past. And now, when we do finally come back together, which we're doing hybrids, we're meeting outside, but we're still streaming for those. Okay. So I hope, or I accept the fact that is something that'll be with us. But what I truly hope we take with us is we went, I don't know, maybe 7-8 months without meeting in person. And then as the high holidays were coming up last fall, we got this tent, and we started doing outside services. And it was amazing to be back together. And I had forgotten how wonderful that was, because in the fall, with the last surge around Thanksgiving and the weather getting colder, we pulled the plug on that and we went strictly virtual. Well, about a month and a half, about 6 weeks ago, the weather started warming up here in Greenville, and the numbers have been looking good in our county, and people have been vaccinated. So we started meeting again in person. And that first service we met in person, just what a joy. What an absolute joy to simply be together in the same,
Nice.
few hundred square feet, right? Concept. And everybody was just overjoyed. And we were just together, and the energy and the feeling. And I said, well, I hope we never lose that. I hope, because we took it for granted. For how long did we take for granted that you simply could be together and open a book and learn or pray together? So I hope we remember that. I hope we remember what a precious gift it is to simply be together and carry that forward. And I also hope we remember that we managed to be a community for so long without these bricks, So who cares where we are or how we do it? And I'd like to find more innovative ways to, bring it to them. Go meet. It's a cliche to say "Ba'avor Husham," to meet people where they are, but it's a cliche because there's truth to it. And I'd like to find more ways to meet people where they are and take things out of our building to where people are, to neutral territory, because I know still, especially the younger generations, are very averse, and walk into a building. Oh God. So what if I meet people for beers and, Torah on tap or something?
That sounds like a great idea. Well, I want to thank you so much. This was absolutely wonderful. It was wonderful to speak with you, and I hope to meet you in person soon. Thank you.
With the help of God, that will be. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.